One would think that if your favorite watch is sort of that classic Rolex look of a bubble back with a non-fluted bezel, but you wish they made one bigger, say in a 40mm size, and then you discover this from Pagani Design, one would think this was the perfect watch. Stay tuned to find out. Hey everyone, you found your way to the nick of time. This is my value-priced watch review channel, where we look at affordable timepieces that have quality and a certain je ne sais quoi about them, but also occasionally look at something maybe a little more expensive or something to lust after over time. In this situation, we are firmly 2 feet, though, firmly planted in the affordable side. This watch that we have here today is the Pagani Design PD-1733. Now, it's sort of a take on an exploring watch from the Big R, in this case with a smooth polished sides, very lustrous dial, simple indicators, and I like the fact that they're using actually, an engraved Pagani logo placed on the face and not just using type font or something along those lines. This watch was bought on Amazon with that very useful 2 or 3 day shipping show up to your house to spontaneously purchase. On Amazon, it was about $130. On AliExpress, it's for as little as $100. Now, like I said, this is theoretically my dream watch. I've always wanted sort of a bubble back, Rolex-y looking thing, but in the right kind of size. I think my high-end dream watch at the moment is a Rolex Oyster Perpetual 41 with that simple bezel, really great looking faces on them, and an overall clean design aesthetic. Don't really go for the fluted stuff. I think at the moment Submariners are sort of overplayed, and the GMT Master, the Yacht Master, things like that, gorgeous, amazing watches, but they're so far out of any reality of me owning that they're kind of pushed off to the side or maybe into the Homage pile of getting something that's similar, but from a brand that I can actually afford to still pay for things like food and housing and shoes on my feet. This watch is really cool, and I made the go out on a limb choice and got it with this sort of teal green dial. And I liked it because it really offset that orange lightning bolt second hand very, very well. This, I think, is the beginning of where the problems lied for me with this watch, in that I don't like teal. I bought the watch. I made this decision. Not anybody else's fault by myself, but my wife would always buy me teal sweaters or a teal shirt, and every time I'd be like, I don't like how this color looks on me. So therefore, I have nothing really to match this to other than an orange puff jacket that I have, which is great, but it's a puff jacket. You're not seeing the watch, so it's not really matching into anything. And I think that's my problem with this watch. So a couple small little niggles we'll get through as we go through it. But overall, for what it is, it's a nice homage from Pagani. Has a very, standard Pagani appointments we'll get to as we talk through it. It looks really cool, and if you like this sort of look, then this might be the watch for you. With that said, we're also going to try something experimental today to see if maybe we can pull out a save on this watch and make it something that gives the proper appreciation to, I don't know what language that is either. Anyway, let's get a closer look at this thing, shall we? And here you have the PD-1733 in all of its glory. You can see that smooth sweep of the Seiko NH35A movement. It's the one that does not have a date complication. You can see kind of the cool sunburst effect on that teal green dial. You can also see sort of the greening of the glass. If you move it in a certain age, you can see around the bezel inside there, almost like a green. You pick it up in the photos on the ads for it too. Kind of like a Rolex Milgauss, how they kind of accentuate the green there. But I believe that's just from the sapphire display. This is a sapphire display. Very cool. Now, as we look at specs, quick walkthrough of that. Watch has been worn a bit as I've tried to fall in love with it, so please tolerate any of those sort of things. But overall, a really nice, homage watch on a clean bracelet. I really enjoy that smooth bezel. Very, very cool. Now let's look at the specs on this. This guy is stainless steel, case, band, clasp. There you go. You can see sort of the milled inner there with a pressed steel outer clasp. No micro adjust there. It's a little bit sharp. It's definitely not the most worn in band, but I've had worse. As we look, the case size is a 40mm case. Lug-to-lug measurement is 48.9 millimeters. The case thickness is 11.7 millimeters, actually quite thin, even with that domed sapphire display that's on there. In addition, the lug width is 20 millimeters, which makes it be able to take pretty much everything you want to throw at it from a strap. And that band that's on it tapers from the 20 millimeters down to a 15.2, and then back up to 18 millimeters when you get to that Pagani clasp. Sapphire display with 100 meters of water resistance. Now we're going to talk about that movement. That movement right there is a Seiko NH35A. It has 24 joules, has a BPH of 21,600 hertz. It is a hacking movement and a 41-hour power reserve. Now for complications on this, well, there are none. It's basically a screw-down crown. And I'll tell you what though, very smooth time-setting action that you're kind of used to from the NH35 movements from Seiko. Very solid stuff there. As for lume, there are lume on both the minute and hour hands along with the indicators on the dial. Nothing on the second hand, just your classic standard setup there. Cut here, you can see the lume at work in my very dark bathroom. Now for finishing, this is a polished bezel, polished sides, but brushed kind of top surfaces, fine brush top surfaces around there. I really like, I know this is going to scratch up like you would not believe, but I love the polished sides. It is on the back, it's brushed stainless, has kind of a hard edge here as it transitions onto the back plate. I know even some old Rolexes are like that, but I wish that had just slightly more care to how it was rounded over. Male end link, so it is going to sit a little bit farther than the measurement on the lug-to-lug of 48.9 millimeters. Not too bad though. Overall sits on the wrist very, very well. And as we talked about in the band, no micro adjust, but overall it got it to fit my wrist rather well. And finally, you have that little kind of milled Pagani shield on the crown, which is a nice little touch. Now, eventually we're going to have like music and something more special for this next section, but we're going to call this next section, Let's Put a Strap On the Watch. Again, it's not as fun when you don't see my eyes making the like strange faces, but alas, this is what you got this time. So let's see what we have here. Here it is on a black NATO band, which I think works pretty well, all in all. I kind of think it balances out that green face a little bit by something kind of nice and contrasty. Here it is on one of my favorite straps. It's actually from Benchmark Brands on Amazon. I really, really like this strap. And I think with that, it actually plays well, and that orange hand and the brown kind of work well together. Very nice look. Now, as a disclaimer, this band is probably 1 millimeter too small for this, but I wanted to see how this works out. And I think it's a winner. That is it on an orange band. It's from Barton Bands. I also got it on Amazon. But I think at that point, summertime, out and about, oot and a boot, as they say north of the border, I think that is just a nice looking band, and it really gives this watch a certain playfulness. Yeah, if you're gonna go exploring, that is a just fine and dandy exploring option to do. And now we've come to the test of time. This is by a completely arbitrary scale where we rate 6 different categories and see how the watch stacks up to other ones, both in its same category and across all the watches I've tested so far. Cool thing too, this list will give you a peek in the end of other watches I have coming up on the channel, and you keep an eye out for anything that you might be interested in. Starting with value, it's a $100 watch, or $130 on Amazon. At that point, I'm going to give it an 8. It's excellent value, but it's priced right in where you are in the rest of the Pagani line. And so therefore, I think it's a proper value for Pagani. Surprising value to anybody who's new to this sort of section. But in that same range, there's a lot of great watches. So it gets an 8. Next up is rarity. You can buy these anywhere. It's not like you're going to run into somebody with them, but overall, I think because of the price and the fact that it's one of the watches they stock on Amazon, on AliExpress, and a bunch of other spots, I'm going to give it a 2. Next is materials. And for this one, I'm going to give it a 7. And it's because it's stainless steel, nicely polished. It has a sapphire crystal display. I think the face of it, if you like the color, if you are Captain Teal, I'm not, you may be in on it. But for me, it's not so much my favorite there, but I'm still going to give it a 7 overall, which is really good. For the look, it's definitely subjective. Personally, I'm giving it a 5. It's a great look. It's, classical proportions and whatnot. I'm not a huge fan of the face of it. With the band and everything, I think it's kind of boring. It's completely middle of the road. Doesn't blow me away. Doesn't, underwhelm me. It's whelmed. It's a 5. Now in finishing is a spot where I gave it a 6, just because the polished edges that we looked at earlier, the polished bezel that's there. It stays at a 6 though because of that kind of sharp edge on the underside. It doesn't have a transparent back on it. It's overall a little boring everywhere that you can't see, and so that's why it gets a 6. Finally, the movement gets a 7, which is a solid score for a solid bulletproof NH35A. Quality, standard movement there. No special credit here, so we get to 35 points, which if you look on the spreadsheet that I have here, you can see that it's at the bottom of the list. It's tough grading. I love a lot of the watches on this list so far. We've been lucky. And if this is the worst that's on the channel, or the worst that I have to offer, you can do so much worse than this. Vocabulary, folks. I'm really exercising it today. Now here's my 60-second pitch for this watch. I think overall it's perfectly fine quality for the price, about $100 give or take. You could do a lot worse than this. I think if you like teal and if you like a very conservative look to your watch, if you like orange lightning bolts, this may be the watch for you. If you're, I would say putting on a dark tan band like we did here looked really good. I think putting on the orange band for me and my color palette looked the best to kind of bring the most out of this watch. Overall though, it's not going to stick in my collection. I think there are other things coming in. I have a Baltony, which is way more money and way smaller, that I think is scratching the itch for this particular thing. But you can't super go wrong here. Pagani continues to hit it out of the park for having a $100-ish price range item for any of the Homage classes that is better than they have any right to be. Sapphire display, Seiko movement, 20 millimeter lug width, so you can try 1,000 different straps on the thing. I think it's a great option to consider. With that, though, I've been Nick. You've been you. And just a reminder that it doesn't take a lot of money to put something on your wrist that makes you smile. And I hope that you're able to smile a lot today. With that, take care, and I'll see you soon.